Welcome back to Learning to Code with Multi-Theft Auto. In this episode, we're going to take our authentication system to the next level using Multi-Theft Auto's ACL system. This is going to allow us to assign groups to individual users and give certain users more permissions than others. So let's dive in. The first thing we need to do is open up our access control list file from our server. So we're going to come into server mods deathmatch, and then we're going to open up this acl.xml file. When we're looking in this ACL file, we're going to notice two things. There's groups which have these ACLs attached to them and objects attached to them. Now, the groups here are going to have objects of either users or resources. You can see down here we have a console user, which is a specific user that we use to signify the MTA server console, which you can see here. So any commands that you see here that you can do, like restart players, the console's access to this command is determined based on what it has access to in the ACL. What we're going to be building today is making use of this user flag to indicate user accounts like the one that we created before and give them access to different resources. So let's make our test user an admin. What we'll do is we'll create a new object. And by putting that object in this admin group, we have made that user admin. So we want to be able to do this programmatically. And we also want to be able to control what these different ACLs actually contain. So if we scroll down, we can see there's a default ACL, which has a bunch of rights inside of it. Each one of these rights in the default group is generally just restricting access so that a user who comes on your server can't immediately start stopping and starting resources. You then take layers on top of that and allow them to do more things by granting them access to ban users or control the ACL itself. You'll notice here that we have functions and commands. Functions will be generally things that the scripts can do, or we're giving specific access to a resource to allow these functions to be run. And commands will be something that a user can actually type in the server. So in our case, we may want to add a new command called toggle flight. And we may want that to turn on and off being able to fly. So let's figure out what building a command to generate these and to add users to the groups up above might look like. To do this, we're going to create a new admin resource. Inside that admin resource, we're going to start with a meta.xml as usual. We'll go ahead and create that admin file. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is open up our server. And pop open the MTA server configuration file. And we're just going to have the admin resource start above players. Now that we have our admin resource and we're ready to get started, we'll just turn off our old server. And let's take a look at the commands. So we want to create two commands. The first command we want to create is called setRank. This command we're going to use to set another user to be an administrator or a moderator on our ACL. So what we want to be able to do is accept an account and group that we want the user to be a part of. So the account being the user's account that they registered in the player's resource authentication script that we created before, and the group being the ACL group that we saw in the ACL here up top, being admin, supermoderator, moderator. So let's go ahead and first verify that the user has actually provided us with an account and group. So if they haven't provided us with either of these, we're going to go ahead and return an error. As usual, we'll use a syntax error for fields not being provided. which is going to be all white. So let's break down what we need to do next. The first thing is going to be ensuring that the account provided is an actual valid account. Then we want to go ahead and make sure that the group is a valid group. The next thing we want to do is we want to take that account name and turn it into an object string that we can use in the ACL. So you'll see here we have user.console, so we'll want to take the account name and prefix it with user dot. Now, because this is a staff set rank system, we only want the user to be a part of one group. So we're going to go ahead and remove the user from any groups that are not the group provided. Now, in order to set someone's rank back to just being a regular player, what they would do is pass us everyone. This being the group that every user defaults into. Now, every user is already a part of this group by being in the user.star wildcard. So we don't want to actually end up adding an object string in here when they're already covered above. So what we're going to do is in our script, if the group is everyone, just return. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add the account to the ACL group. And we'll use the object string to do this. And finally, we'll let the user know that we were successful. So in order to ensure the account is valid, what we're going to have to do is get a account object variable initialized to the get account. And then if we did not get an account object, then what we will do is return an error. And we'll make that error red. And then we're going to do something very similar for group. To get a group, let's dive into the documentation. So if we come into server functions and then go down to ACL, we'll see here that we have a bunch of functions. One of them will give us a group from its name. ACL get group. So we pass it a group name and it will give us the actual ACL group object. And then in similar fashion, we will just take this same error messaging provided here, change this to be group, and change this to be group. Prefixing the account name with user dot, we're just going to do object string is equal to user dot and then the account. Next, we want to remove the user from all groups that they're already in so that they won't get duplicated in any group and they won't exist in multiple groups. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get all groups. So let's dive back over to the wiki for a moment. And if we look here, we had ACL group list, which is going to give us a table of all the groups. So let's use that. Now, what we get back from this in this variable is a table much similar to how we got back a table when we were pulling results out of the database. So we can loop through those in a much similar fashion by using a for loop. We're going to specify the key and the removal group in pairs of groups. And what we're going to do here is we're going to remove the object from a group. So let's dive back over to the wiki for a moment, and we'll see that we have ACL group remove object. This is going to allow us to remove a user object from the group. It's going to take in the removal group and then the object string. Now you'll see here that key is an unused variable that we don't actually need. In Lua, you can say that you don't care about the key by just providing an underscore there, meaning just give me the group. We don't really care what is in the key. And then if the group is equal to everyone, we will just return, and we will let the user know that we were successful in removing them from the groups. And we'll make that message green. Next, we need to add the object to the group. So similar to how we have ACL group remove object, we're going to use ACL group add object and specify the group object and the object string. And then we will let the user know that we were successful by returning an output chat box. Successfully added account to the group. And again, we'll make that green. So now we have our basic command set up. But if we turned on our server and tried to just run this command right now, it wouldn't work because all of these ACL functions are restricted by the ACL. If we come over to the ACL and we look at the everyone group with the default ACL, all resources are being put into this bucket. And if we come down to the default ACL, we'll see down here at the bottom, all ACL functions are currently disabled. This is also true for the add account function, which is why when I distributed this ACL file to you guys a couple episodes ago, I added the resources players object into the RPC group so that we wouldn't have to worry about the ACL in that episode. The RPC group down at the bottom here gives us full access to use all of the ACL functionality as well as adding an account and logging in. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our administration resource to this bucket so that it has access to all of this too. Now you can arrange this file however you want. I'm choosing just to add these to the RPC group, but in a production server that you're actually setting up, you might choose to have very granular permissions and actually create an admin or players resource group by itself that only gives it access to the exact commands that it needs, so that you can really dial in these permissions and limit any sort of way that a user could abuse your system. For the purposes of this demo though, this is going to do us just fine. Now that we've added the objects to the RPC, let's go ahead and jump over to our server and fire it up. With our server running, let's come over into MTA and connect to our server. And now that we're here, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and try and set the rank of our test user to moderator. And it says we've successfully added the account test user to group moderator. Perfect. So if we jump back over to our code and we look at moderator, we'll see that we have object test user in moderator. And if we come down to admin, we'll see that the test user has been removed from admin. So it looks like our script is working. Let's move on to the next step. The next step was the second command that we wanted to add. What we want to do here is we want to provide the ability to set an ACL write. So what we're going to take here is the ACL that we want to update, the write that we want to issue, and access being true or false. The first thing that we're going to want to do is ensure that all of these fields were actually properly entered. So let's go ahead and do exactly what we did above. Next, what we're going to want to do is take a look at the ACL and make sure that we actually get a valid ACL back from it. We're provided with this ACL get function to grab an ACL object out of our acl.xml file above. If we don't receive one, let's return an error message. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take this access variable that we received and turn it into a Boolean. What the user is providing to us here is probably going to be something like the actual word true or false, and we want to turn that into the variable true or false. So let's create a local access Boolean object. And what we're going to do here is a little bit different. Above this, we're going to create an access types variable that's going to be a table, and we're going to use this table as a lookup. What we're going to do is we're going to specify a key called the word true, and we're going to assign it to the actual true Boolean, and then we're going to create another key called false and assign that to the actual false Boolean. Then if we call access types with the key being the access that the user provided, we should actually get the Boolean. If the access Boolean is equal to nil, then we know it was not either true or false and the access type was invalid. So we'll go ahead and return an error here. One thing that we are going to go ahead and do is just string.lower, and we're going to wrap that around access here to make sure that we always get a lowercase true or false. Whether the user provides it to us in uppercase or lowercase form, we should be totally fine. Now that we're done validation, let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to turn these variables into a line in our acl.xml file. For that, let's jump back to the wiki. Here you'll see we have an ACL set write. What we can do with this is receive the ACL, the write name, and whether or not they should have access, and then update our acl.xml file accordingly. So let's go ahead and jump back into our code, and let's make use of ACL set write. And now we have a success message that is green, outputting to our user. So let's go ahead and give this a try. What we want to do is use the set ACL write to restrict the access of our set rank command. So let's jump over to our server and let's restart our admin resource. And let's come in game and let's use /set ACL write everyone command.setRank false. and we get the specified ACL does not exist. Let's take a look at our ACL file. Looking at our ACL file, we have a group called everyone, but the ACL name is default, not everyone. So let's try using default in game. Successfully updated the ACL. So if we try and set rank test user to admin, interesting, it succeeded. Let's jump back into our code. We're using the wrong variable here. Swap out access for access boolean. Let's come back to our server, restart admin, and let's try that again. We're going to set ACL right, default, command.setRank, false. And let's go over to our server, and we can see that it seems to have updated in the server. And if we jump back to our code, and coming back to our ACL file, if we come down, we will see that the setRank command has been added here. Now, this is not always immediate. Sometimes it takes a moment for this file to be updated. We can solve that by adding an ACL save below the ACL set right. So let's restart the resource and give that one more go. This time what we're going to do is we're going to enable the set rank command for the admin group. So we're going to set the ACL right to admin, and we're going to go ahead and make command.setRank equal to true. And if, again, we come over to our server, we'll see that we have that there. So if we come back into the server and we type setRank test user to moderator, we see nothing happened because we're not logged in. So we are in the everyone group, which we turned off the access to set rank to. If we account log in as test user with our password, then we try and set rank test user admin, we will see that we have successfully updated our rank to admin, even though we were already in the admin group. So now we have a basic administration system. It's not perfect, but it's a good starting point to building out further resources and being able to enable or restrict them based on certain roles. Now, in a lot of cases, you want a command to just always be defaulted to disabled. So if we jump over to the documentation and we look at add command handler, what you'll see here is we have the command, the handler function, or the closure that we use in a lot of cases, and then we have this restricted argument. Now, if we jump back into our code and we look at some of the stuff that we had done in authentication, you'll see that I added these two false flags here. The goal in this case was we wanted to get the second false flag here to turn off being case sensitive. But this argument here turns off the default restricted flag. If we come back to admin and we look at our set ACL right and we default that to true, this argument being true means that this command is by default restricted and always has to be added to access control for a user to be granted access to it. So if we come back and restart our admin resource again, and then we try and /set ACL right, you'll notice we don't have access. And that's because that command does not exist anywhere in our acl.xml file. So what we would need to do is add that command in here, and then we would be able to actually use the command in our server. This we're going to use a lot moving forward when we build administrative commands that we want the default behavior to be that they're restricted from people. and then we can add the groups that we want to be able to access them, so that we don't have to always be adding in on the default group the restriction. That's going to be it for this episode, guys. In the next episode, we're going to dive into what the client side can do and what does a client side versus a server side script actually mean.